Now, looking at the rest of what happened for Aaron's case so far, guys, because you can look it up. You guys are wondering how you can do that. You come here to the Minnesota court records online. You can do the record search, you can do a case search. And if you have it here, you can use the case number. And you'll scroll down to the bottom and you do case details. And then if you come down here, if you're wondering where people are getting all the documents, this is where things are. So, for example, he has interim conditions. He has post bail or bond with no conditions, $75,000. Release with zero conditions. Or I'm sorry, release with conditions for $0. And those conditions are the ones you heard before. You have to remain law abiding. You have to make all future court appearances, maintain contact with your attorney. Can't leave the state without written approval. Keep your attorney informed of your current address. Contact the probation officer as directed because he's going to be on pretrial release. So that's supervised through probation departments. And why is it supervised through probation? Because they already have a probation department. It makes sense. No contact with the victims. Don't enter the victim's residence. Okay, well, yes, don't go to the Baldo bunker. Stay a reasonable distance away from the Baldo bunker. Now, we have all the things that happened here. So we get all the way to the bottom. So this is when everything was filed last week. And then we have the discovery disclosures. And the disclosures are the disclosures from the prosecution. Now, what is that? We went over this a little bit in Nick's case here. So this is the discovery disclosures. It just talks about what they're giving up and what they're putting in the case. So obviously, state of Minnesota versus Aaron. What are they going to do? They have witnesses. Yes. They have trial witnesses and they have other persons. Do they have grand jury witnesses? No, but this didn't go to the grand jury. Statements relating to the case. Yes, they are written and recorded and they have summaries of oral statements. They have physical evidence. They have documents and tangible objects. They have Aaron's criminal history. They have exculpatory information, which once again, I wonder what they have. So there's exculpatory information. Now, the prosecutor at this point hasn't dropped the case. So there might be exculpatory information, but how exculpatory is it? It's going to depend on that. Obviously, the prosecutor doesn't think it's that important. And that other information, I don't know what other information is. But this one is interesting. What is exculpatory? I'd be very curious to know, and hopefully we find out at some point. But for right now, we won't. Jim is saying the prosecutor is a total political fanatic. She will not drop this. Well, prosecutors are generally loath to drop cases anyway. That's a very normal thing. They don't like dropping things. They think that, well, the charges were filed. We got to this point. It must be legitimate. So what's Aaron going to do here? What's the toes options? I don't know, guys. I don't know. Does Aaron have options? Maybe. But it's going to be up to him and his attorney to go through what's out there. I don't see enough ways for him to poke holes in the ship and sink it. So, yeah, he's going to have to take some sort of deal. Like I said, I think he qualifies for the misdemeanor at the end of the day. Now, people are asking, because he has the misdemeanor, what's going to happen to his other charges? Well, remember, he's on probation. So what does that do for him? Well, typically, when you get new charges while you're on probation, you're toast. Aaron's case, these aren't there. It's a new filing, but it's not new criminal activity. And that's a distinction that routinely gets made. I make it all the time because otherwise, if you got penalized and finally charged with old criminal activity, like, how is that fair if you're already on probation now and I get charged with a crime I did 3 years ago and they now bring it up? How's that fair to somebody who's on probation doing what they're supposed to do? It's not. Now, they're going to have to answer for what they did, but for the probation to not turn around and punish them, well, that makes sense. That's a fair shake in the system. So Aaron, yeah, he has like 90 days of jail time hanging over him. That's not going to kick in here. Now, the court here, if they're sentencing him, they're looking at the 364 days. They're going to see this 90 days hanging out there. And look, Aaron still went and did some shithead things. So what is the court going to do? The court could look at it and say, okay, fuck this guy. Here's 9 months. Here's 6 months. Here's whatever. So that's why you don't commit crimes, guys. They build up and the court starts to fucking hate you. And very quickly it will. Katie Kennedy says, clear retribution for being a witness. Could this be witness intimidation? No. I think that's going to be very tough because it's a crime. Now, if they had gone to the police and made up a bullshit story and then the police were investigating, sure. But the idea you can't prosecute, like once you're a witness for a crime, that you have this immunity, because that's what it would create really in the situation, Katie. That wouldn't work. Society would not want that idea because that would give you basically de facto immunity for prosecution till the case is over. And let's say it's something like George Floyd's case. Like what? A year and a half long, 2 years long? 2 years where you can't be charged with a crime because it might look like police and witness intimidation. Especially like, let's say, for example, like in Derek Chauvin's situation where one of the defendant's a cop. Well, if the cops arrest you, is that witness intimidation? No, it wouldn't work that way. You committed a crime, you should be punished for it. You should be held responsible for it. I get what you're saying here, but you have to think about it that way. No, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Brian is saying, if Aaron destroyed his phone and got it replaced after his warrant was issued, can he be charged with destruction of evidence? Potentially. I mean, it depends on what they're looking at. Do they want it? I don't know. I would never recommend destroying it. I mean, you can hide things. And that's because you can unhide stuff. If you break something, you can't unbreak it. What you really need to do, though, is speak to an attorney in your area and he can advise you. But I'd be very careful about destroying stuff. Remember, Hillary Clinton could pull the game where they smash a fucking phone and they say, "Oh, we smashed phones and threw them away. We wiped it with bleach bit." There are people who can get away with stuff like that. Not you. Not you. And the ultimate issue is, and this is something I will say, because this is one thing I noticed, because I had a couple of cases when I was doing some prosecutor work. There are two types of people generally who destroy evidence: stupid people and bad guys. Are you a bad guy? No. Well, if you're a stupid person, that's not good either. So, you have to be careful about when you're dicking around with stuff. Be careful. If it just happens to fall off a boat, well, yes, we live in an accident-prone world. We do. You have to be smart about it. AM says, can he just say he had permission and becomes her word with his with no evidence? I mean, it could be, but then it just becomes, why didn't he show anybody else? I think that's going to be an argument there. And I don't know if that's going to sell as far as it goes. Like, oh, I had permission to do it. She told me I could do it. Well, where? Was there a text? No. When? When did she say this? Yeah, and Kaylee comes up there and says no. I mean, who's going to be more credible? It's a battle of credibility at that point. And you have to be very careful. Can you win that battle? And that's where it comes up, putting things together, finding out information about the witness. Can you sandbag them? That's a dangerous one. I mean, are you willing to risk 3 years in prison over that? Are you willing to risk 3 years in prison? You can convince a jury that you're more credible? Because the jury could say, no, she's more credible. They could say, fuck you both. Or they could say, yeah, Aaron is more credible. Two of those aren't helpful to you. AM says her and Nick had the public nude pictures when they go against them. No, like I said, those are old. It's not like they're 20 years old, but they're like, what, 2 years old? The Hito pictures are like 2 years old. And like Bottlegate, like we said, you guys know, it's like what, 18 months to 2 years old as well. They're not good anymore. They're not relevant. I mean, they are relevant. I'm not gonna lie. They are relevant. They have some probative value. But how much probative value do they have? Do they make it more likely or less likely that this crime occurred? Establishing that. That's how you have to look at it. It's from 2 years ago. How much more or less likely does it make it this thing occurred or didn't occur? You have to answer that question. The answer is not a lot. It doesn't, that's not going to move the needle as much as you think it will. Katie says, how is any agreement binding when they're all high as fuck? Oh, I get what you're saying. Like, is this a binding contract? It's not a binding contract in the sense of, like, oh, yes, good sir, I shall sign here. No, it's an agreement that we're going to just share pictures with each other because we're in this little four-way fucking suck. Because that's the other thing, though. I mean, you're going to have to, Nick, that's going to have to come out. Why are we sharing pictures with each other? I mean, you're going to have to establish some relationship. You're going to have to establish the intimacy and the idea that this shouldn't be done, because otherwise we got this guy's banging Nick Recade's wife. Okay, well, he's just some dude. No, he's more than a dude. He's part of the cover. He's part of the polycule. So, yeah, there's a lot of parts you have to consider here. Things have to be, because remember, you have to explain why. You have to show there's that intimacy. She didn't give consent, and it was meant to be just between the four of them. You have to show that, and you're going to have to show that there is this kind of ring around it. And by telling everybody about it, that's how you establish the ring. So it's a bit of a problem.